We're there. Brilliant. Okay, so welcome everybody. Looking at the power of feedback today, 5th of January, brand new year of 2023. So our overall aim for today, next 60 minutes, we want to make sure that we are just raising the awareness of how important feedback is to the person's progression and development. So we have a kind of assumption of the baseline understanding around feedback. You as professionals, in whatever role that you do for SSG, that's a given, that the assumption of understanding what that is. But we're now really wanting to kind of look at why and remind ourselves why we're doing it, and then linking it to that keyword, which is progression. Okay, so we have, as always, 4 kind of outcomes. Identify why we must provide feedback, and the key word there is timely. Looking at identifying potential barriers to this, especially as you as operations sit frontline and you're doing this. We want to be looking at sharing best practice in how feedback is already being provided. And then looking at where and how we can improve. As always, it's pointless as going through this process of going, oh, that's really good, as opposed to, oh, we've got issues here, and not addressing that. Okay. And then we will always look at what can we do around Q&A of that. So there'll be a set 5 minutes at the end if you've got that. But as we go through it, hopefully the session will be as free flowing to allow you just to ask those questions straight away. Okay, first up straight away, we've got 3-minute timer on this. Okay, so using the Teams whiteboard, and I've got this set up here, bear with me. Annotate a note to identify the following for yourself. Okay, so you're going to have to identify your name, your knowledge level out of 10. So you guys in the classroom, you just jot this down on a piece of paper. Your definition of what feedback is, and the extension if you are able to. So let me see if the hard work paid off over Christmas. Let me find the whiteboard. Bear with me. Can you just confirm? Can you see that? Yep, brilliant. Thanks, Nicole. Brilliant. So what I want you to do now, over on the far left, add a note, okay, and provide examples. Oh, wait, bear with me. Let me make sure it's the right one. Task 1, CPD, the power of feedback. There we go. Okay, so as an example there, I set a post-it up, name, knowledge level, your definition of feedback, and then include timeliness into your definition if you have chance. Okay. Nice, George, straight up there. Okay, coming up to a minute. So just double check that your post-it doesn't stick over the top of somebody else's and that you expand it enough so everybody can read it. So just as we're finishing off then, let's ones that we can see. Jeremy, nice and bold there. Providing a narrative to give a candidate praise and constructive suggestions on how they are doing and how their work is going. It's good. Thank you for that, Jeremy. Let's look. George, feedback is giving someone information to help them improve and develop. Okay, nice. Choose a different role. Tina, and I think you've got Gemma sat there with you. Is that right? Morning to you both. Feedback is giving someone reassurance and positive information and further ideas for development. Really good. You can tell what kind of job roles you do there as opposed to the different job roles for Jeremy, which is excellent. Hope. Feedback is about giving a reaction, reassurance and information to someone's work or a task. This can be used to give them improvement, support their development. Good. Similar words coming through. Fantastic. So we've got a lot of sixes, sevens, sevens. Fantastic. Right. Let me go back to sharing my screen again. Sorry about the backwards and forwards. Matty, can you see that again? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So what we have through clarity, so we've got the kind of like the formal, the theory-based written down feedback. So in educational context, is information provided to a learner to reduce the gap between their current performance and their desired goal. Okay. Now, the primary purpose of feedback is to help learners adjust their thinking and behaviors to then produce improved learning outcomes. So everything that we wrote there around the definitions we just identified, there's nothing wrong with those. They are correct. Ultimately, they're right. But I think sometimes that we can fall, me included, can fall into the trap about it having to be summative, having to be that outcome driven right at the very end, that chiseling it into stone, when really the real powerful feedback, as stated by Schutz there, is about challenging the process of a person's thought. So you will have heard in the past, and you may well stick to this mantra around the most powerful way of learning is to get it wrong, be corrected, and then get it right. Okay. So trying repeatedly to get it right, that is powerful learning. Now, if people continue to do that and don't get the input that we give them at the right time, then that's where we're missing opportunities. Okay. So task 2, I'm flipping backwards and forwards, as you can tell. Again, using a Teams whiteboard. All right. Provide examples of methods used to provide feedback. So remember to add your name. So I'm sure you've got 2 or 3 go-to ones, but then take 2 or 3 minutes. And what I want you to do in those 2 or 3 minutes is then to also think maybe outside your specific role as well. Have you seen any feedback happening? Have you had feedback given to you maybe in a different environment, whether it be your education, whether it be a coaching or a sports situation? Flip this over. Feedback methods. Okay, have a go. So what methods have you got on there? Should really have some music on here, I think. Obviously, you're sat in the room at the back, and you are not able to type into this kind of thing. But if you have a discussion between yourselves, jot it down. Maybe unmute yourself in a little while, contribute. I'm more than happy for that. Okay, one more minute. Thank you, Jeremy, George. See that on there, Matty. Thank you. I've got 1 or 2 post-its on here with no writing on. Don't know if that's an error from me. Oh, there we go. Mike, thanks, Mike. Mike, if I could come to you in 30 seconds, if you could just expand on yours there, they're really good. I like those.
Yeah, sure.
Cheers, mate. Okay. Go on then, Mike. So what have you put down there as your kind of examples?
Okay, so I mean, I've got to credit Matt for introducing this to me, but I work with a lot of Ukrainians and other people where English isn't their first language, and a lot of the course that I do is about paperwork. So it's just how can I using an app to help them with their English,
Wow.
to change Americanisms which they think are correct into British English. But also with the groups that I have, seeing them turn their camera on for the first time, seeing them make a vocal contribution rather than a chat comment, and either praising them at the time or making the effort to give them a call and say, how did you feel? Wasn't as bad as you felt, was it? And then just encourage them to always use that as the starting point now to turn around and boost their confidence.
Yeah, brilliant. So you're looking at that progressive element that you're introducing. Really good. Yeah. So Hope, morning Hope. So your delivery for the people that have not met you now, your kind of second year level 3 diploma delivery to our sports guys. Why have you put yours down there? Because they're bang on.
Hi.
Hi.
Which ones?
So I think this verbal one-to-one, and then also this kind of group assessing and conversations. Why is that powerful?
Oh God, I really feel on the spot right now.
Okay, sorry. So
it's all right.
I've witnessed some of your lessons, and I know the people that are in there, and you've got such a diverse group, even though they're small numbers, that may be somebody listening to feedback about something. So let's say one gentleman, very confident, very openly discuss, will challenge whether it's right or wrong, and somebody else hearing your feedback as to actually this is why that is not quite correct for your assignment. Would that then impact them?
Oh,
So
100%.
Yeah,
I've got kids in, like, obviously that won't ask questions and stuff. So group assessing kind of works in my group because I've got kids that won't ask questions, but I've got the kids that really will challenge. I've got kids that probably shouldn't even be on a level 3 that are on a level 3 as well. So group assessing works, and then peer assessing each other's work to see if they are and they aren't, like, meeting the criteria.
Yeah. So,
but praise emails kind of work really well with our kids.
Yeah.
Just because then they can see that they're actually doing quite well.
Yeah.
Because it's okay saying things, but I think once it's written down, they appreciate it a lot more.
They do. And I think that we also need to be aware of time management. You can't write everything down. You don't have the time to do that. You don't have the opportunity to do that, the facility to do that. And also, it's not necessarily all the time, and it's not as impactful. If somebody has to wait for you to feed back a report, you lose some of that impact. But then also, if it's constantly corrective, then that can be demoralizing, and we need to be careful of that. So if we are telling somebody the same thing 2 or 3 times as formative assessment, as formative feedback, that can start giving doubts to them, and we need to be careful. So if we're sending the same message out to 1 or 2 other people and they're hearing it again, then actually we're still giving them that message. Good. There's lots of good examples on there, very similar examples of excellent work, sharing best practice there, Matt. Yeah, I agree. Looking at that, providing positive and negatives. I do agree with that as well. So we'll go back to sharing screen again. Just conscious of time. So looking at how does this feedback now, when and where and how do we look at feedback and what is the opportunity? Because the word timeliness has come into this category for myself. And I think it's important that we do front this up as part of our team, that we have got so much better at this. If I was to compare 21-22 to the previous years, we were leaps and bounds ahead of that. We were having some candidates maybe not receiving a formal written feedback at all because of the speed of their course. So changing that to online systems, changing that to how we give you the tools to be able to provide feedback, having that flexibility, but then also having assessment plans being owned by yourself, which means that very much aligned to what you're delivering, when you're delivering, and how you're delivering the assessment. So looking at the simple learning cycle in the bottom right corner there, we'll start off with the instruction. We then look at learner performance. And in between learner application and instructional adaptation, that's where the most powerful feedback comes in. Okay. So what we've done is if you're a coach, then you look at this whole part whole where we break things down. It's the same with learning. What we want to do is we want to give somebody some information, let them have a go. Whether that is linking their learning to an example, whether it's providing a definition, whether it's going away and doing something, delivering a session, whatever it may, attempting a maths question, whatever it may well be, because you've given them information and instruction on what to do, they have a go. That's when we provide feedback. But the important part then becomes, how have they taken on board that feedback? So how have they applied the feedback for next ongoing situations? And then that cycle goes again by looking at information is adapted for the learner. So as we go back round to instruction again, they've had a go, we'll give them feedback, they have another go, then we look at, right, okay, I need to change the information I'm providing you and dilute it down and make it simpler, or make it a more accurate to your role or your specific example. Or it may be information that I need to go away and research because the questions you're asking me, I've not got in front of me. But that cycle is continual, okay? What we want it to do is we want this cycle to cycle upwards, okay? Rather than downwards. Because if it goes downwards, then we start looking at linking things to behavior, okay? And we don't want that. We want it to be learning, and positive learning environments mean an upward cycle. So why must we provide feedback in a timely manner then? touched on this already. We need to make sure that they're able to retain the information, aren't they? Okay. And by showing us, by talking to us, by providing written information, evidencing, we are looking for, have they been able to retain the knowledge? Okay. Now, if we don't check that, then actually they could retain the wrong knowledge, or knowledge which is accurate, but not at the right level. So for Abdullah, who is our guru functional skills, if he delivers information to somebody at level 1, but they're sitting a level 2 course, they're not gonna gain their qualification. They've retained the right information, but it's not going to be pushing them forward. Okay. If the feedback is provided, but it is not timely, some of these things may happen. Okay. Apologies. So the learner may become a bit confused. That's where some challenging behaviors may happen around the, well, I don't quite get that because didn't we do this last week and you said that was okay, and now it's not okay, and what's going on there? They may get dejected. So that constant battle of how can we provide feedback on where they're not going right without them thinking that we're nagging, that we're just demoralizing them. Okay, we're pushing them down. Again, think about how behavioral situations that are ongoing is being dealt. It's very similar to how you provide feedback, because that's what you're doing, isn't it? You're saying your performance today wasn't great in session. Your language wasn't great today. All right. Actually, 3 out of 10 corrections on your multiplication exam or whatever, we need to work on that. Okay. We then need to be aware that with feedback, as constructive as it may well be, can and does sometimes target people's confidence. So if we don't consciously think about feedback and how we deliver it, that person may not openly raise their hand again next time or take a risk. In an observed session I saw before Christmas, where I saw a candidate who has got high needs, low ability level, low in confidence. They took a risk and they got it wrong by saying it out loud in class. And not only were they supported by the tutor, but someone else in the class supported them with that. And that demonstrates that kind of formative feedback, that open discussion, that peer on peer feedback happens quite a bit. And that is good. Okay. And it's good for confidence. If the feedback is provided, but it's not in a timely manner, the wider impacts. So we've gone to the specific impacts on the learner, on the candidate. Okay. But what are the wider impacts? They are important, so important. But obviously at SSG, we focus on the individual first. We focus on that candidate first. But having a loss in understanding will take time for you as professionals to correct that. Okay, that missed opportunity. You always do, but you can't have, for example, a collapsed timetable for a week to be able to revisit certain things that are being done wrong. We can't have one-to-one sessions for everybody in maths because they didn't quite understand division. Okay. Incorrect assessment, evidence being provided. And we all know what that means there, which is a knock-on effect to your time, to the timeliness of IQA processes becoming pressurized, the timeliness of funders getting the information that they need. But we also need to be aware that we want to maintain our standards, especially now that we are in the, and rightly so, working with high-end diploma level 3 courses. Okay. Our awarding organizations expect a minimum standard, but that is true for our level 1. Okay, so they expect the minimum standard. So when we do have resubmissions, we need to make sure that it is a true reflection of what that candidate understands and what they know. Because when they leave us, as Hope, I'll refer back to you because you mentioned that, and a lot of people may not understand what you were talking about around candidates being on your course. We have had people who have been provided tutor assessed grades, tag grades through the pandemic, who may now be awarded GCSE leveled English and maths grades at a certain level when actually the application of that knowledge might be much lower. Okay, so we need to be careful because we are passing these people on to industry and to other education as well. And then finally, really important, missed opportunities around truly stretching and challenging. Okay, so we talk about this a lot, but what we're talking about when we come to the individual is you got that right. You've done everything you need to do on your course. That is fantastic. Well done. But how would you then do this in this situation? Okay. Now, they may not provide that as assessment for you because they've done everything. That's great. But having that feedback there to be able to say, would you be able to do that if you worked for this employer rather than that one? Okay. Giving feedback, stretching them in order for them to challenge their knowledge is important. Okay. Enough of me now. So hopefully this works. Fingers crossed. Matty Vine, you know what I'm like with technology. Please let me know if it's not. Following the Mentimeter QR code. Okay. I'll pop the link in the chat box so you can click it as well if needs be. I want you to have a go here now. What could be seen or classed as a potential barrier to the candidate learner receiving timely feedback? So if you've got a smartphone, fantastic. Oh, sorry. I'm going to leave it on there for a minute. I can see Matt Cheevers is tapping away on the phone. Is it working for you, Matt?
I'm just a bit ancient, Danny, remembering how I actually
Join the club, mate. Yeah. Is it working, Tori? Fantastic. So smartphones, just open your camera, point the open camera at the QR code, and a link should pop up at the top of your phone. Click that, and then that should give you options to start writing in keywords or contributions. And I want you to provide me examples or suggestions for potential barriers for a learner receiving timely feedback. Okay, is everyone happy with that? So I'm going to unshare my screen and pop Mentimeter on for a second. Hopefully you can see that coming up now. So the more people that write the same answers down, the larger the word becomes, obviously, because it's a word cloud that we're on here. But we've got some good examples. It looks like attendance is a big issue. So what are the barriers for providing timely feedback? So tag levels, learning difficulties, IT, I assume that is there. Good. Language issues, yeah. Not having the right facilities, maybe. Sports hall for practice, lack of resources, work pressures, lack of time. Okay. Absence, we'll link that to attendance. Okay. No staffing ESOL, so that will link to languages as well. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Confidence to do that. Okay, so that may well be your confidence in delivering that, I assume. Sorry, I'm just catching up with myself now. So if we take a few seconds just to look at those as a collective, apologies if it's a bit small, let me try and make it a bit bigger. Attendance, absence. Let's look at maybe categorizing a few of these into what behaviors, what situation is owned by the candidate and the learner, and what situation, facilities, things like that is owned by us. Okay. And then us as SSG could then be split into two again, couldn't it? By yourselves as the person giving feedback, the professional, and the organization or the department. So maybe things that necessarily you don't control. Okay. So if we look at attendance, that is definitely on the candidate. They may not be able to control it because of something going on in their life, but that is a big issue, and I do understand that. Okay, not acknowledging. But then if we were to look at too many candidates, okay, that potentially is the bigger department issue. And then if we were looking at unclear priorities, I would put that on you or me as individual professionals, because if you're unclear, you need to proactively say, I don't really get it. I don't really know. I don't really understand. Or is this the direction that we should be going on? Is this not the direction we need to be going on? So thank you for contributing for that. That's all good. What I want to do now is just close this down so we can move forward to the next one. And this is the real good, important one now. Okay, I want you to take a few minutes in your breakout rooms. Okay, and I'm just going to put you into them in a second. Where can we improve and how do we improve? Okay, so just read that through as well. Read the bottom phrase while I've got the breakout rooms up. There it is, rooms. Okay. So when you go into your rooms, just nominate somebody who is just going to be happy to feedback, to contribute. All of you, if needs be, as long as you're not talking over the top of it. And then see if you can then come up with not just where, but how can we improve this situation. Okay. I'll then pop into each room. I'll put a time limit on the rooms and we'll give you just under 10 minutes to do that. Okay. See you in a minute. Hi, Tina.
Oh, nightmare.
Hi, Danny. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
No, oh yeah, you are.
Yeah, sorry about that, Danny. My laptop just completely closed everything down. Can you chuck me in a breakout room?
Yeah, of course. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, Star.
Let's see. Which one do you want to
Give us. Whoever has us are going to be so lucky. So. They're
I'm
gonna
just
be shocked
looking.
to see us jump in there.
Let's put you into room 3 if I can.
Hopefully you can, Nick.
Tori, no, Tina, there we go.
Get a pen.
Room 3 assigned. See you later.
Thank you, Danny.
Pleasure.
Where can we improve and how do we improve?
Well, definitely like
Feedback. That's the word.
Whoa. Danny Burke, we were mid-conversation.
Okay.
It's brutal. I gave it 2 minutes head up. Sent the 2 minutes warning. Are we all back in? Lovely. Okay, so I just want to spend just a couple of minutes with each group, if we can, with your nominee. No particular orders. We'll just go, I don't know, group 3. What was your area do you think that we could improve on within our feedback, and then how?
Who was group 3? Sorry.
Apologies, Jeremy. I think you were in room 3. George, okay. Jenna, yeah. Jeremy, Tina, Gemma.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell you what we thought and our findings. So for the 2 questions then, where can we improve? And then how do we improve? The interesting thing was, obviously, there was a mixture in our group between, myself, so delivering adult learning exclusively virtual based, whereas the other people in the group would work at the centre, so it's primarily one-to-one. So it's kind of interesting, but there were commonalities in the themes that were coming across. But firstly, in the centre, there was actually staffing issues was an important point,
right? Yeah,
which did come up, are being addressed actually. So having the appropriate and also enough staff in order to deliver that feedback to candidates virtually. It's probably selecting the most appropriate means to fit the candidate for giving that feedback. Some candidates respond better to in person, some candidates respond better to little and often, some respond better to written, some respond better to more formal feedback. So bringing those aspects together, those themes together, how do we improve? We thought that really anchoring the feedback to a solid structure from the earliest possible opportunity whether the candidates are learning virtually or in person, linking it right back to the IAG meetings. So finding out the needs of the candidate and also the abilities of the candidate, by setting a sort of clear feedback roadmap, it helps the candidates know what's expected and when appropriate and when feedback is going to be delivered and how often and in what method, but also for the tutors as well. So, for example, knowing that certain feedback is required by a certain time, if staffing is an issue, maybe a colleague would know that they're expected to shadow a tutor and jump in to maybe hold a one-to-one session with the candidate to deliver that, or know they've got to mark some workbooks, for example. So having that feedback sort of roadmap, if you like, that structure, helps the candidates and the tutors both know what is required and what might work best with certain candidates and what courses by what time.
So it's good, because what that does there is it identifies just how important our careers information advice guidance is. How our pre-course information is really, really important, and that is everybody who is from a management level in Lisa Nixon's team for the business development, around the people in the office, answering, taking the calls, marketing, making sure that person is positioned onto the best possible course that gets them the outcome that they need. As for the staffing and the recruitment, it's yes, definitely, but it's not just about having staff. Totally agree. Okay, we can have staff. It's about having the appropriate staff at the appropriate level with the same mission values, with the same professional values, and the ability to then understand what to do and when to do it. I'm sure we'll hear in a minute a couple more areas for improvement, which may be a little bit more operational based, as in how we facilitate the feedback, as opposed to people being in the position to then be able to do it. But yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Jeremy. So within the Teams 2 chat, Abdullah, who was the speaker for your group, mate?
I'll start with group profiling, and then Matt Cheevers, you could probably jump in for Google Classroom.
Yeah, go for it,
and everything. Yeah, so we spoke about group profile, and we said how important that is when giving feedback, because obviously with group profiles, it helps the tutor or the person who's giving feedback to learn and know a lot about the candidate, the person you're speaking to. And I know it's helped me in situations where I had to give, feedback to candidates I've probably never met before. I remember doing some feedback for Hope's candidates last year. So I think reading the group profiles helped me a lot, to obviously learn more about the candidates, because often what happens is you might come across a student who's, he doesn't like to receive feedback. They might just think of it as a negative thing. They might think you're trying to put them down or you're criticizing them or something. So as a tutor, it's very important that you choose your words carefully when you're giving them feedback, because you don't want to leave them in a negative sort of position where they think, oh, I don't want to speak to the tutor. And it's also about the element of building trust. If there's no trust between yourself and the candidate, then they don't want to sit there and listen to your feedback. So for me to know how to choose my words, and for me to know who I'm speaking to, I think it's really important that I read the group profile before I go and approach that student. So I think
to improve, sorry, Abdullah, to improve that, because sorry, because I want to direct what you're saying. I totally agree. Would you say then we can improve? Is it about having access to that group profile, or is it about the information that's on it or in it?
I would say it's not more about the access. I would say it's more about filling it in as accurately as you can. So giving enough information in there. And I'm going to put my hand up and say I'm the first one who's probably not good at filling group profiles. I don't fill it perfectly, but I think it does help if there is information in there, because if there isn't enough information in there, it's obviously not going to help the tutor.
And as time moves forward with that professional relationship between the tutor, the LSA, the candidate, that group profile should become more enriched.
Absolutely.
Because as the relationship develops, more information is shared, the confidence, and there we go. But so to start off, we need to make sure that whatever we know, we have
in there.
access
It's in the
to,
group
isn't
profile,
it?
yeah.
And if we're not
Absolutely.
asking the right questions pre-course, then maybe we should go back a couple of stages and look at the process there, and maybe look at the questions that maybe be missed through no fault other than we're now seeing it as an opportunity to improve. Thank you, Abdullah. That's good. Matt, I think Abdullah threw you the ball there.
Or under the bus, one of the.
Well, I didn't want to say that.
No, I think as we're discussing at a group, I think that the platforms we use,
Yeah.
both teaching, do not help us at all.
Yeah.
Google Forms and Microsoft Forms, which we use as a platform for our end of group units. So in my case, there's 3 units during the course, which are all on Microsoft or Google. On those platforms, once the learner has completed them, there is no ability to go on there and provide feedback to their answers on the Microsoft form. And
Right. Okay.
if they then want to go back and change one of their answers, as far as I'm aware, they can't go back once they've submitted the Google form and amend any of their answers.
Okay.
So we're kind of guiding them down a path that makes it more difficult for us to actually look at what they've said, and have their assessment of learning,
Yeah.
and provide any feedback on that. That's one point.
Okay, well, we need to, like you say there, it's important. We need to look at that then, don't we? People with maybe a little bit more wider knowledge on that, experience using those platforms, whatever it may well be, and look at if that facility is available. If it's not, then we need to be having a bigger look at that, whether it be adding more tools, less tools, whatever it may well be. But that is an important thing. And again, time is an issue. We've seen that through our Mentimeter responses. Time is an issue for everybody for providing feedback. So what we don't want is to be using things that aren't helping us, that are actually an anchor to what we're trying to do with our efficiencies. So it's important we hear that. Thank you. Thanks for that, Matt. And then the final group, if you were not in the other 2 groups, that leaves you there. Who's going to knock? Nice, Matt, Yvine.
Yeah, we had the Shannon, Lillian, etc., and Hope and Mike, and we were saying that we often use Google Classroom a lot, like for all of our courses, whether that be the sport or the adult courses. Times when we have to fill in like the assignment briefs for the summative feedback and occasionally the formative feedback. We're saying like possibly to help out, as sometimes that can be quite time consuming, especially like speaking to Mike, who has a lot of candidates on his courses. And sometimes we might not be supplying the feedback to the quality that we often possibly should, because we're trying to squeeze it in, meet our deadlines for IV and SV. So we're thinking possibly like doing verbal feedback a lot more, whether that be like recorded and like on our laptops and sent via email. And Mike was saying that there's a feature on Classroom where you can actually record some feedback and do it that way. And then if people work within quality and within IV, if they have access to the Classroom, I know Steve has had it before. Last year he was on my Google Classroom and he could see that feedback, and so he's not having to always dig through the assignment briefs, can just listen to that. Then it could be quicker for everyone all round, and some candidates might take that on board a bit better than reading 1, 2, 3 paragraphs or little bits of writing, or just actually hearing it. It takes 10 seconds rather than reading it. It just takes a minute. So it's sort of helping everyone all round, I think, if we would look to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think nothing's off the table. We've just been through what we've been through over the last 2.5 years, 3 years, and it's completely flipped everything up into the air, where our prehistoric set in our ways of educating people is that no longer has to be pen to paper. Okay, so that's given me an action to support Emma Graham, to support Jenna, to go away and speak to our awarding organisations, because we'll start with the end output of that and say, at the end of your external verifications, will you be happy if we provided you with a range of samples of, there you go, verbal conversation, verbal feedback, how does it look to you, what format would you need it in, blah, and so on and so forth. Once we get the yay or nay and how that looks, we will then come back and say, right, okay, we can then feed that into you efficiently? What tools do we need? How can we go about that? Because we don't just want to say yes and at the end of the year it causes a catastrophe. What I can say is where you are looking at formative kind of feedback, so for everybody in the room, that day by day, hour by hour, then yeah, do that. Obviously, we'd like a variety, a range, because you're going to be have to ask to evidence at some point something. But definitely give that kind of verbal feedback. In sport, we should be filming that live session, pausing it, walking down there, and then filming us saying, this is your feedback. This is what I want you to be improving on, working on for next week. This is why we're going to go and do it. Do any questions? Right, let's have a Q&A. Fantastic. And then pause. And then next week, do their assessment. And then if you save that, that is evidence. That there's nothing wrong with that at all. Okay. So yeah, it's a challenge and we can go and ask. Okay. Okay, just aware of time. Got 1 more minute. Just want to share my screen just to wrap it up a little bit. Okay. Thanks for everybody for providing that. It is invaluable with that feedback. Looking back ourselves, we are doing a great job at giving feedback. Okay, I know that because our awarding organisations are working with Jenna, are working with Emma Graham, and are telling us that the feedback is good. There are places to improve, of course, but they wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't say there was things that we can improve. And the fact that everybody on this platform has said this morning, yeah, there is something we can improve, and this is how we can go about doing it and look at it. We're always going to be challenging ourselves to improve. Okay, but how are we already giving feedback? So don't lose sight of that. We need to look at factoring in time to provide feedback within all learning, not just against summative assessment. So as much as possible, factor that into your planning of your sessions. Okay, what we can't do is eliminate 99% of the group to give 1% feedback, and nor should we. Okay, so be imaginative. Think about different ways of sharing best practice. In your session, I am going to deliver this. They're going to have a go at this. We're going to find the outcomes out, and then I'm going to plan in feedback here. And what does that look like? Well, it's up to you. Feedback, what we're giving here, could be peer on peer. A nominee from the other group is going to feedback onto what that group has just fed into there and presenting. Okay, it could be a Mentimeter thing. It could be whatever. Okay, vary the methods in which we provide it, but keep it specific to a small focused area. So if you are going to give feedback, okay, try not to go more than 3 points, especially if you're going verbal. All right, if it's linked to assessment, then that's different, because you have to be able to assess and then give marking and feedback on that. But if it's around how they've reached the point of providing their evidence, like Mike gives some real good feedback about how somebody's progressed in their performance on the Teams chats. And I know that Matt Cheevers sits one-to-one with people on their business plans often, and demonstrates just how they have become efficient and really focused on their own personal business and stuff. So that is giving feedback, because when you first meet somebody to where they are now, this is what you have improved and progressed on. Okay. An important conclusion to take from these studies is that there is no single type of feedback appropriate for all learners in all instructional situations. That comes from our largest awarding organisation. Okay, and the largest in our country as well, and that's on their guidance. So from Pearson, that basically means that if we are giving one written piece of feedback to the whole of our group, we are missing masses of opportunity to provide timely and accurate feedback to other people that don't respond to that. Okay, so I'll leave that with you just to think through. Any questions? always quiet. So just reflecting back then, hopefully I've raised the awareness now. Not that you weren't aware, but we're putting it back on our to-do list. We're putting it back at the front of our mind rather than the back of our mind, starting afresh for a new year. Okay. And hopefully then, if you were to reflect on your own knowledge, if you were to score from earlier, so those 7 out of 10s, hopefully you're able to say you're 7.5 now, or you're an 8 out of 10 now. Okay. But the key thing to that is what has specifically improved. All right. So for me now, if this wasn't CPD, I'd be saying, right, let's go back onto that whiteboard, that facility. What you're going to do, go back into your post-it note, and I want you just to annotate at the bottom now, my end score is now a 6.5, not a 6, because I am now a little bit more confident with what I need to, why I need to give timely feedback to a learner, because it helps them do this. And that would be it. And that would give you masses of evidence to provide to your managers, to Jenna, to any external Ofsted, blah, 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 blah. A huge amount of evidence. Okay. If you do want, there is references there. Okay. Things that I have used before.